Welcome back to the Sales Revolution. I'm Ingrid Maynard, founder and managing director of The Sales Doctor. I'm joined today by someone I love very, very much. Her name is Stacey Packer, and she is the founder of SP Consulting. She works with experts to help them create world-class thought leadership businesses. Welcome, Stacey.
Thank you so much for having me.
Such a pleasure.
And thank you for that beautiful introduction.
Well, it's the truth. I think you know that, and I want everyone to know that. You know, when I think about you, one of the things I've often said to other people, I might have even said it to you, was that your approach to me was possibly the most impressive sales approach, in that you came bearing gifts. And I know that you would say, well, I really wasn't trying to sell anything. But here's why I was impressed by it. You contacted me and you wanted to introduce me to two people, first and foremost, which is what I mean by came bearing gifts. And then you asked me for my recommendation of a BDM for one of your current clients. Before you said anything about who you were, and then when I asked you about you, the thing that I was left with was, I have to work with this person one day. I just have to. It was just a matter of when. You'd also done your research. You were quoting something that I said that told me that you'd actually read a lot of my positioning information, which to me was absolutely impressive. What would you say is your service philosophy?
Thank you, Ingrid. That's a great question. I think there's probably multifacets to my service philosophy, and the first one is, when I'm speaking to someone like you, I just feel so honoured because I can tell from the very beginning that you were so talented, and why wouldn't I want to help you and connect you to the people that I know would, I guess, coming back to your philosophy, have mutual benefit from meeting you. So, I mean, from the very beginning, I was thinking, oh, well, there's this person that I know would love to meet you, and this person I would know would love to meet you. And I think one of my philosophies is to be generous from the very beginning. And I've had lots of people tell me that that's maybe not the right approach, but it is who I am as a person. And one of my core values is generosity. So I'm always looking for ways to be generous, but also, I work with some of the world's top thinkers. Why wouldn't I want to introduce them to people? Because there's going to be mutual benefit. So the people that I introduce them to are going to benefit from hearing their thought leadership and understanding, how they can help them and help their clients as well. So I really think about that. And I want to help you create a world-class thought leadership business. So I'm looking for ways of connecting you from the very beginning, because I think that makes a difference.
It's obvious to me that one of your values is generosity. It oozes from everything that you are and everything that you do. Tell me how your career has helped to shape your service philosophy and that value of generosity, why that's important to you.
I've had an interesting career. I started working with the South Australian Tourism Commission, and I lived and worked for them in London. And I also moved, prior to that, I moved from a small country town up here to Adelaide, and I didn't know anyone, and I didn't have a network, and I really realised I had to establish one. Otherwise, it was going to be very hard for me to make connections, build relationships with people, and build a network. And so from the very beginning, I've had the philosophy of giving more than I ask for, closing the loop when I'm networking with people, being really appreciative of people's time. Back to your first question about turning up and being researched. I really think, well, if somebody's going to, even though they're looking to work with me, I owe them I guess that I have that responsibility of making sure that I'm very well researched, so I'm not wasting their time, so I can offer value from the very beginning. And so I really I think over my career, the thing that I've been really focused on is building that network, turning up with gifts wherever I can, and really not. I think we've turned into such a transactional society. So really thinking about, this is not a transaction, it's about building relationships. And that relationship might not ever, like you would say, bear fruit in 5 years, might not bear fruit until 5 years' time. But I think it's really important that that relationship is first and foremost the centre of everything.
Yeah, I think that that's probably where we've been very aligned since we started to work together. But just a couple of things I just want to stress here. So giving more than you're asked for, closing the loop. I'll come back to that in a minute, and offering value from the very beginning. You also talked about, we've become very transactional as a society rather than relationship focused. I would also add to that I think perhaps we've become really addicted to immediate gratification. And you talked about something perhaps not bearing fruit immediately, but it will happen over time. And sometimes it's not direct. It's sometimes indirect. It might not be with that person, but through that person, it might actually have a multiplier effect, mightn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, it might not. I mean, I'm never thinking, oh my goodness, what am I going to get in return? I just really don't have that thought. It's, can I be of service? The work, I mean, like I said before, I'm so fortunate. The work that I do with thought leaders, you all want to make a difference in the world. Why wouldn't I want to show up and be of service from the very beginning? Because that's going to be better for everybody. So.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You talk about closing the loop. Would you mind just talking about what that means for you, and what happens when we don't do what you mean about closing the loop when we're formulating those professional networks and relationships?
I think, so what I'm referring to there is when somebody introduces you to a prospect or a potential client, and you want to firstly thank that person for the introduction and say, it was great to meet X, Y, and Z, and I really appreciated that introduction. That's the first step. But closing the loop is going that step further and making sure that after you've spoken with that person, you follow up with that initial person that introduced you, and let them know, hey, it made a real difference. Here's where the conversation went. Here's what we both got out of it, and here's what we're going to do now. And I think that does a number of things. A, it shows gratitude, which I'm very big on also. Secondly, it lets people know the types of referrals and the types of relationships you're looking to foster. And I just think it's the kind thing to do. I mean, I love it because it signals to me that, I can look for those opportunities again for that person. I mean, you're fabulous at doing it, Ingrid. I think you live and breathe the philosophies that you teach. So I've watched you do it time and time and time again. But it's something that a lot of people miss. And I think maybe it's because we rush, or because maybe it's instant gratification. I don't know really what it is. But I think we really need to bring back that closing of the loop, making sure, I mean, even if the introduction wasn't great, that's a really good piece of feedback to say, oh, look, we met, but we don't see that there's anything, because then I can either follow up and say, oh, actually, I think this was the part that you guys missed, or, okay, great, thanks for the feedback. I won't refer that type of person to you again, for example.
100%. It comes back down to respect and gratitude. Gratitude that person thought of you, gratitude that person went to an extra effort to introduce somebody from their network into yours. And, it's the least we can do really to pay our respects. Now, you work with thought leaders. I love that word. I'd never heard of that until I met you. What does that mean to you, and how do you identify the ones that you want to work with?
So, thought leadership, change makers, you could call people activists even, it really depends. They've got deep subject matter expert. They've been either working in their field for 20, 30 years, or they're an academic, but they are really, I guess, knowledgeable about a certain topic, like you with sales. And they see things a little bit differently. Like they can see around corners. They see what leaders of today or their audience really, really need, and they're wanting to bring that to more people. They, yeah, they know that their piece of thought leadership will make a difference in the world. And to answer the question about how I work out who I want to work with, I'm really looking for talent. You've got to be a great communicator to be a thought leader. You've got to have deep subject matter expertise. You've got to have frameworks and methodologies, or at least when we have that initial conversation, I need to know that you're working differently to others, and really that aspiration to make a difference. And so when I first initially talk to people, all I'm looking for is, can I make a difference to your business? Can I help you create a world-class thought leadership business? It really comes back to my positioning, and I'm looking for that all the time. You might already be world-class, but can I help elevate you even more? Can I help that message get out into the world? Do I have a network that I can connect you into? I really want to be certain when I'm initially talking to somebody that I can actually help them. I had a conversation with someone last week, and I had to say to her at the end of the conversation, I don't think I'm the right person for you, but here's two other people that I think will be right for you. And so I actually called them both, gave them the brief, then I introduced them both to make sure that connection, that I helped this person, because they might not have been right for me, but I knew that they were right for these other people. So,
well, that's again an example of your generosity and really seeking to do more than you've been asked for there, and that really demonstrates too that you're very clear about the type of people that you're going to be a fit for all of the reasons that you've mentioned there around that criteria. Tell me what you love about working with thought leaders.
Well, I get to do this every day, and I pinch myself. I've been working with thought leaders for 7 years now, and I just can't believe how lucky I am. One thing that strikes me is you're all doing amazing things in the background that no one will ever know about. Like things that you might not be able to talk about publicly, but you're all changing the world in some sort of way. Like you're all uniquely wonderful, talented, beautiful individuals who, want to make a difference in the world. Like, why wouldn't I want to? Like, that's what I love. I love people who say, look, I think leaders really need to know this right now, or we're going through a time of lots of change. Here's how, in your case, we need to bring mutual mattering to the fore. We need to really talk about a sales revolution because it's needed in the world. So, yeah, I just love it. I feel so privileged, and it's never lost on me. I am inspired every day. I can't believe that I get to do this all the time. I feel very grateful.
Wow. Well, I'm certainly very grateful to be one of those clients of yours. We talked before about the criteria that you use to, choose thought leaders that you would love to work with. But one of the other things that makes you so successful and makes your clients successful is your ability to link them into a wider business ecosystem. So what's the criteria, or what are the considerations that you think about when it comes to the wider business ecosystem, so that next layer out from your clients?
I think there's a couple of considerations. So the first one is I really think about if I'm referring somebody, are they going to close that loop? So that's the first thing. So I want to make sure that if I'm referring you, Ingrid, to somebody, that that person that I'm referring you to is going to turn up, do what they say they're going to do, and help build your business and you theirs. So that's the first thing. The second thing is for my wider ecosystem, I really think about, do these people have the same values as me? Do they have the same level of service as me? So I'm really looking for a standard of service. Do they get back to people quickly? Do they, are they really well planned and researched when they have that initial meeting? I'm really looking for all the things that I think are my secret sauce within my business, and carrying that through to my ecosystem as well.
So the fact that you're values driven really says everything, I think, about your philosophy and your approach. It's not so easy, though, is it, to identify what someone's values are? How do you start to ascertain a sense of what their values are beyond just what they're doing, like, closing the loop, showing up, being planned and prepared? Those sorts of things are sort of after the fact. Do you have things that give you an indication early of the type of values that these people might have and whether or not they're aligned to the way that you like to do business?
We try and work with everybody before we'd pass them on to a client. So we really do experience their whole end-to-end service before we would hand them on. We also have ways, so for example, if we're referring somebody to a VA service, we'll look for points of friction. So for example, we've got what we call ways of working documents that we help clients set up, so that translating their strategy into execution is a point of friction often. And so we look for, what does the VA need to know that we can support with that will help transfer that strategy into execution. So it's also looking for those points of friction, like I said before, to help expedite and support that relationship moving forward, because it's all a little bit of trial and error, like I said. But it's how can we support you in the best way so that you can thrive.
Yep, no doubt. Yeah, it is. It's really hard to know. But the fact that you work with those suppliers end to end first gives a pretty good sense of what somebody's about and how they're likely to show up. For the most part, people are usually consistent, especially if you've worked with them for a little bit before, handing them on to one of your clients. What would you say, when it comes to entrepreneurs looking at their own business ecosystems, what are some of the ways that you think, or what would you suggest that they do to better curate their own business ecosystem so that they're surrounded by people that can add to their existing business in a way that is going to be supportive and sustainable?
I think it's really good for everybody to know their own values for a start. I often meet entrepreneurs who don't know what their own personal values are, so knowing those and having those front and center is important. The second thing is knowing the level of service you want to provide and the level of service that you want others to provide, I think, and having those conversations up front with your ecosystem. I also think being generous and giving from the very beginning means that it causes your ecosystem to do that for you as well, and you start attracting the people that will give, turn up and say, oh, I've got someone that you should meet. Here, let me introduce you. But going that step further and providing that email to say, this person would like to meet you because, and I could see this is how you'll benefit as well. So I think it's also role modeling and behaving with your ecosystem the way that you'd like people to treat you too.
I think so too. I think that when you are role modelling and treating others the way that the way that you are, the way that you do treat other people, means that you're going to attract people who are very similar in their own way of seeing the world and their own way of doing business and so forth, similar to us. I mean, we might have come together, but had there been a values misalignment at some stage, it's not going to be something that can be sustained. At some point there is going to be that point of friction that you mentioned before, and people part ways, which is totally fine. But for a sustainable business ecosystem, it really is important. And I appreciate what you also said there about being clear about what your own service level expectations are, which comes back to that model of excellence. So it's one thing to expect others to behave in a certain way, but we've got to really be aware of how we're embodying that. If we expect others to do that, how are we showing up?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, role modeling is really, and a way of being is, you and I have spoken about that, is important. Being who you say, that's integrity. Being who you say you are 100% of the time. So,
right. 100% of the time. Yeah, it's consistency, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I would say you're probably more familiar than anyone else with the sales revolution, my philosophies of mutual mattering and mutual enrichment. And I would say that you have embodied mutual mattering and mutual enrichment as ways of being before we even met, before I even coined some of those phrases, and you helped me to coin those phrases. What does mutual mattering and mutual enrichment look like for you and your clients in practice?
Well, I think if I was to talk to you about the 5 principles of mutual mattering, which it seems hilarious considering that they're your principles, but the first one is unconditional positive regard for those we give service and those who give service to us. And I think that is central to everything that I do. I love my clients. I really think that I have nothing but positive regard for them. I have a relationship of trust and respect, like we've spoken about, so that if something isn't going the way that we want it to go, we can have a conversation about it. And I think that that's the number one principle in mutual mattering. The second one is celebrating of mutual wins, and also being there for when things aren't going well as well, and having that person to be able to bounce things off of and problem solve with you because as you know, being a thought leader can be lonely sometimes, and having that person in your corner I think is important. And the last one that I really resonate with is the being real through the lens of compassion. So action with heart, which I think is everything that you are. And I see it enthused throughout everything you do. But, really being heart-led in what I do is also important. And I've learned a lot from watching you and working with you about the way that you treat your clients, the way that you treat the ecosystem which you operate in, the way that you talk about your clients and only want the best for them. The book that you're writing at the moment, it's all centered around how can I help with the lens of love my clients through the lens of love.
Yeah, well, geez. Thank you, Stacey. I think I that's exactly what my intention is there. And I think we're both very fortunate in the sense that we're in the position that we are in, where we do get to work with clients in who we love, and in a loving way. And when I think we show up with that unconditional positive regard, like you said before, you said action with heart. to have those compassionate conversations. When people know that you've got their back and you really do have their back, you are able to give them feedback. That still might be, sometimes that feedback's a bit hard to hear, but you're more likely to take it on board when you know that somebody's saying it from a position of really wanting to be of service to you, and in accepting that it might be hard to hear, but I am taking the risk that you might not like me in the moment because it's worth me committing egocide in order for you to benefit from what I've heard, what I've observed, or what I've noticed.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all, like you say, it's all about intention. It's all about what is my intention in this moment. And my intention is always with my clients is to make sure that they're operating at world-class level. And so if I see opportunity that I think that they, could take to be more in that realm, then we're going to have a conversation about it. And, I see you do that with your clients over and over again. And you come from that loving intention. I just want your business to be better. I just want, I want you to embody these principles because I have seen in your 25 years of experience that it makes a really big difference.
It's just, thank you, Stacey. It's just 25 years. Makes me one of those dinosaurs. But no, I really appreciate that. Any final words for anyone that's listening today who would like to either think about themselves as thought leaders or who may be the next layer of thought leaders? Not only, of course, we'll include your contact information and how people can find you and find out more about you and the services that you bring, but really, if I'm one of those entrepreneurs who really wants to do something, I want to make a difference in the world, what are some of the things that I can be doing today to set myself up to work with someone like you?
I think it's about really being researched and having credibility. So whatever you can do to have focus around your particular area of passion, because often then that's where it starts. It starts, we've spoken about it a lot about, you had this passion for sales, and we were only talking about it the other day when you started working at the body shop and you really realized this is something that you love. It's about, really deepening that credibility around and researching, maybe getting some academic knowledge around the space as well. It really depends on where you are in your journey, but starting to write down what you agree with, what you don't agree with, really starting to form your own thought leadership along the way, and noting down those things in your career where maybe you've had an exceptional win because of a methodology you put in place, and working out why did that methodology go really, really well, or that framework that you put in place at your business if you're an employee. But it's really about getting clear on what your thought leadership is, the area of expertise, how you build that credibility, and then building it over a period of time.
I think that's a beautiful methodology for anyone who wants to be a top performer in their field to take on board. And what I heard you say was to really think and reflect on what was it that I did, or what was it that I implemented here that made the biggest difference, and what were the differences that I created, then gathering some of that evidence so that by the time I'm either ready to make the next career move or start my own business or go into a thought leadership area, I already have, that credential base, that credibility base that I can draw upon. I've already got my IP, on the road to getting started, on the road to getting formulated. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And really noticing what people are leaning into when you're talking about a particular area, your area of expertise. What are people really fascinated by? What haven't they heard before? Because I think we all move through life thinking, oh, people have heard it before. This is nothing new. When actually there is a lot of new, maybe not a full body of work, but there are nuances within things that are very new and are a different approach. And the world is changing so quickly. And so people are finding it hard to adapt and change. And so whatever we can do to help them, that integration, and noticing that along the way in your career, I think is really important.
Yeah, it is important. Stacey, I bless the day that you were born, and I'm so grateful that you and I met, and I'm even more grateful that we get to work together. I'm so grateful that you were here today as my guest. Thank you.
Thank you so much.